Hello everybody, it's Chibi, and today I'm going to be doing a manga and anime comparison review on Chapter 6 of Tokyo Ghoul and Episode 2 of Tokyo Ghoul. Now, it's been a while since I've done a comparison review, and I finally wanted to get back to doing this. Now, I want to let a couple things be known right now before I continue on with this comparison review. A couple of people have told me that they have skipped over vital information after Chapter 9 in the third episode, and they're mixing two arcs together. Now, supposedly, if this is correct, and the information has been correct, and it pretty much, I'm being told that they're compressing two arcs together, I am not going to be reading past Chapter 9. I am not going to make any more comparison reviews because clearly, if they are doing this, it's going to have a lot of spoilers for me specifically if I decide to read past Chapter 9 into Episode 3 territory. And so, I'm just letting you all know that right now. If this is correct, please let me know in the comments below. So anyways, let's talk about Chapter 6 of Tokyo Ghoul. So, overall, majority of the chapter and all the vital information inside of this chapter was carried over into Episode 2 of Tokyo Ghouls, and it pretty much took up half of the entire episode. That's exactly what Chapter 6 took up in the anime. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things, okay? In this chapter, they removed a couple of things in it that wasn't really that important to the overall story, but once again, I want to bring up something I have noticed. They're once again cutting out Hide's character development in this chapter. Chapter 6 of Tokyo Ghoul cuts out a little bit of interaction between Kaneki and, Hide. You get to see a little bit of interaction between them, and at the same time, you get to see two club members pop up that were not in the overall anime. For instance, they were not in the anime, and they were talking to Hide, talking to him that, oh, you should get Kaneki to join us and all that. And then you had Hide lie and say, no, Kaneki has this special disease to where he'll die and he'll start sweating out this weird goo or stuff out of his body. And so, pretty much what we can get is they cut out that scene from the anime, which technically, it's not important to the overall series and story, but they cut out that development to a side character. I really hope Hide is not an important character later on down the road for them to cut out all this information about it. Because every single chapter that's had Hide, Kaneki's friend, in it, they've cut out some form of core development for him. So I'm starting to worry about that. Now, the beginning part of this chapter pretty much starts off right after the opening song of the second episode. Because the first part of the episode right before the opening was technically filler. Now, I think it was Chapter 2, I talked about how they cut out the entire cake scene and how Kaneki called them monsters or whatever, and he was introduced to meat. For instance, Toko was trying to make him eat on Chapter 2. Well, in this, they pretty much use that scene from Chapter 2 and they shove it into Episode 2 with the entire cake scene, and at the same time with forcing Kaneki to eat meat. And so they kind of right their wrongs from skipping over from Chapter 2 or 4, I think it's one of those chapters, which is fine by me. So they fixed that, entire mistake they did. They went back to it, and pretty much, even though it was filler at the beginning part of the episode, it still explained pretty much the events exactly how it should have been if they were to stick true to the manga. Now, overall, the most concerning thing about the stuff they removed about this chapter is Hide's development. That's really the biggest concern I have. But there's one thing I do want to bring up, okay? And this is going more onto the anime territory. So far as we all know, we've been seeing constantly Rize popping up in Kaneki's mind, talking to him constantly. It's been constant since Episode 1, and we constantly see Rize popping up trying to tempt, Kaneki to eat meat, human meat. Now, here's the thing. In the manga, I do not see Rize at all talking to Kaneki, so these scenes we're seeing in the anime are technically either filler or it's Kaneki's subconsciousness. And speaking of one other thing too, it's interesting how they're adding certain specific scenes like that. I think they're trying to focus more on, I guess, the psychological genre. I think that's what they're trying to do, because they're cutting out certain things, but at the same time they're trying to make it more traumatizing for Kaneki as a character, and that's how they're showing his character off. And so, that's one thing I will say. Oh yes, I actually do want to bring up one more thing about this episode comparison with the Chapter 6. The brutal beatdown of Kaneki versus Toka at the beginning of Episode 2 was so fucking brutal. Like, for instance, that episode, okay, when we see, Kaneki getting the shit beat out of him by Toka, constantly see his face getting beaten and all that, that technically did not happen in the manga. So, one thing the anime did do correctly is it added more brutality towards Kaneki as a character. You got to see more violence, you got to see him get the shit beat out of him, and at the same time, you get to see, how I'm guessing Toka's personality really is. But either way, that was one major scene they really added also into the anime that was more brutal than the manga itself. I like the scenes overall from what they adapted from Chapter 6. It was good. The quality of the anime looks beautiful. Besides the censors, everything looks really good. It does. So, I feel like once again they handled, you know, Chapter 6 of the manga into Episode 2 of Tokyo Ghoul correctly. It isn't that bad. The only pressing concern, like I've already stated a couple times, is Hide's development. That's the only thing I really have pressing concerns with. Besides that, it's good. Now, onward to Chapter 7. I don't know if I will have the Chapter 7 comparison review out tonight, tomorrow or so, but expect it soon. But either way, let me know your thoughts on these videos, everybody. I know a couple people have a couple problems with me doing these comparison reviews, and I understand completely if you have problems with that. Do not worry. As I've said before, I am not reading past the current episode of anime. As I have already stated at the beginning of this episode, someone told me do not read past Chapter 9 because you will get into spoiler territory since they're mixing up arcs together. And so I'm just letting y'all know that. You have nothing to worry about it. I will not go past Chapter 9 if this information is correct. So everybody, hopefully you have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.